Special welcome to all our listeners to today's podcast. I am super excited to be in conversation with one of the women on the African continent that I so respect and admire. She is a personal friend of mine, and she is just a woman who is so passionate about the empowerment of women. And yeah, she is an inspiration in the way she just gives herself to the development of girls and women on the African continent. Duwa, welcome to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm really, really honored to be here today.
Fantastic. Let's start by just telling our listeners who you are. Who is Duwa, and how would you describe yourself?
Okay. So I am a 48, almost 49-year-old African woman. I'm not ashamed of that. I don't hide my age. I'm a mother of one, a stepmother to one, mentor to many, auntie to many more. Those are all of the roles when I think of myself that I really think about immediately. Those are the roles that I guess make me Mama Bear. Those are the roles of the people that I take care of and love, etc. I'm 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 quite a I love a sense of humor. I love witty one-liners. I love to laugh, and I'm quite adventurous. I love to travel different places. Um, I do believe that I am a person of integrity. Integrity, honesty are things that are very important to me, so that when I look at myself as a woman, and especially in leadership in Africa, that's something that's really, really big for me, is looking at my values of honesty and being honest. I am a Christian, and a firm believer in God, and I love to be part of my church. I listen to lots of gospel music. There's a chance if you ever see me in traffic dancing, you can send me a message and ask what are you listening to. It's probably something gospel related, because I will get down in my car, and I know lots of people have looked at me like I'm nuts. So um, that's a little bit. And I'm also a coach. So I deal with whole body wellness, because I believe that individual is a whole person, not just a business person, or etc. And then I'm also a business coach, and I teach soft skills to women in leadership. And I believe soft skills bridge the gap between the hard skills that women will learn and on the job or in a degree. And oftentimes they are that small piece of the puzzle that's keeping people from breaking the glass ceiling.
Wonderful, beautiful. Such a great introduction of yourself. I love the fact that you call yourself a mama bear. Isn't that the story of most of the African women? We take care of the tribe, not just the clan, okay?
Yeah.
So we are many things to many people. I really, really love that. Dua, let's deal with the elephant in the room before we get into our conversation. You are a former president's daughter. Just tell us a little about that. I mean, I would literally pinch myself sitting, conversing with a former president's daughter. You and I are from the similar age group, and really growing up, the president and his family were just, a family that was far-fetched. They looked like they were not as human as we were. So just tell us a little bit about that experience of being the daughter of a president. And I know that you did serve in some position as well under his presidency. Just take us on a journey.
Well, thank you. I would say our journey started many, many years ago, probably when I was about two. So, well, before I was 2, but I remember being about 2 or 3 and my father saying that that was what he wanted to do. He wanted to go back to Malawi. He wanted to, that was why he studied economics. That's why we were out of the country. There were so many things that he said that was what he wanted to come back to do. But at that time, it seemed kind of far-fetched because we were in exile. So the thought of it happening was like, it will never happen. So we went about our regular lives. We were third culture children I was born, raised part of the time in Ethiopia, Zambia, and UK, and the United States. And so it all seemed very far-fetched to ever come back to Malawi, full stop, or even to come back and he would be in some position in government. And at some point, he returned to Malawi, and he started working for government and working his way up through government till the point in time where we got the phone call. I got a phone call, I think it was from one of my siblings, saying, Dad's going to run. And I was like, run what? And she was like, run for president. And I was like, that's madness. Did we not run from that country? Were we not in exile? I mean, are we not going to get shot for even thinking about such a thing? You know, and I was living my own little quiet life in the US. And so it just all seemed very, very far-fetched. As far-fetched as it seems to everybody else is how far-fetched it seemed to us. Well, history shows it did happen and he did get elected, and our lives changed completely. I don't have enough time in this podcast to express the ways that life changes, because you become part of a machinery. You become part of government machinery. And because of that, and that is for a reason. Even if there are negatives to that, it is for a reason. It is to protect the asset, to protect the president. So we couldn't run around the same way we did. And when I arrived in Malawi, I wanted to get my flat. I was told no. You know, you couldn't just bring anybody home. You know, at 28, 29, I went to live with my parents because it was safer for me. And that was like, I've been living alone since I was 18. So that was a tall order, living with my parents again. Anybody who's ever moved home or lived with their parents knows it's hectic to live with your parents. Now, you know, because your parents are going to ask you, it's 7 p.m., where are you going? Are you going out to dinner? Who are you going out to dinner with? This is in regular situations. Then in our situation, it's like, okay, so are you taking security? Have you vetted the place? I mean, it just becomes a much bigger rigmarole, I guess I would say, than you'd want. And you're like, I just want dinner with this cute guy I saw. You know what I mean? That's it. You know? So, it changed our lives. It was the pinnacle of what he wanted to do his whole life, and it's what he worked his way towards. And I got to see, I feel very blessed that I did come home when I did, because I got to see a side of my parents doing what they loved, doing what they had worked their whole lives to. My mother just also took to the job very well. She started her foundation. There was a lot of things that she did. And those are the things that I take with me more than those are the memories and the things that I hold with me about what happened in our experience, more than maybe what happened at the end of the experience, which was quite negative, or the other crazy things that happened in there. I mean, there's I'm not going to lie to you, there's crazy things that happen when you're in this position. Just fantastical things where you're sitting there going, pinch me, what is this? You know, you're sitting in a room and you're like, okay, there's Kofi Annan, there's this, there's that, was that Madonna, you know, just straight. And you have to have some kind of sense of decorum when you want to jump up and down and scream and take pictures, you know what I mean? Because you also have your idols and you're sitting in front of them, you know. And so I think for me, the thing that was always strange was when people would defer to me, because I just was like, I'm just the kid of somebody. You know what I mean? So that was something that took a while, you know, the good morning, madams, that type of thing, the saluting, that was, yeah, it was, those were some of the things that I don't think I ever got used to. And I don't think I ever got used to my life not completely being mine and my every move being, you know, watched or reported or, you know, that type of thing. That was hard.
So you were just telling us about your adventure. Tell us about your most amazing experience and your wildest experience being a president's daughter.
Wow. Okay, there's quite a few that come to, there's been quite a few that have come to mind, just to kind of show you how we were so ill prepared. We really were ill prepared for this. That's the thing that I'm going to say is, I really wish there had been more, maybe it's just not something somebody had thought about it, but there'd been more training, like how to deal with all of this, you know what I mean? Because it's a little bit hectic. But I can think of a couple of moments. I remember being, I didn't know there was, at that time, there was such a thing as a 7-star hotel. I knew about 5 stars. And I thought that was the pinnacle. And we went to Singapore's 7-star hotel. And they were like, well, this is this room that you're going to sleep in. I got undressed, put everything away. And this was the time before cell phones were very popular. I would have taken a picture. And I saw there was a guest book, and I opened the guest book, and the last person who had signed in there was Chelsea Clinton. And I remember being like, whoa, what? Who's my life become? This is madness. So that was one of the moments that was so surreal. And then I think the other moment was where you start to see that isn't just a job that somebody has. I mean, we were all there to support my father, but and where you start to see the seriousness of it is during his second campaign, where we went to Mazuzo and we went to a soccer stadium. And I didn't know what to expect. He said, come with me. I'm doing some campaigning. And I got on the road with him. And he was in another van or something a little bit earlier. And I was with, I think, some of my relatives. I don't know who I was with because I can't even remember. This is how much this situation just surprised me. So we are driving into the stadium. And as we're driving into the stadium, they're chanting. And the stadium is filled to the brim, and it's tens of thousands of people. I think someone said 60,000. It could have been less. It could have been more. Either way, it was more people than I had ever seen with my own eyes. And they're chanting. And I remember first it was like, wow, because you could feel it in your body. And then it was like this 60,000 people, you know, the fear sinks in. And we got out, we went on top of the stage, and we were sitting there at this stage. And I'm looking out at this endless sea of people. You can't even see people's individual faces. And I remember thinking, I think this is about the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life. You know, it was humbling. It was really, really humbling to be like, wow, all these people. Okay. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to, you know, kind of sit here quietly, not make a noise, not make a fuss. And I don't know, I can't remember. I just remember a part of my father's speech, and he said, and this is my daughter. And I was like, I was like, I don't want to stand up in front of all these people. No, I'm just here minding my business. I'm here supporting you quietly. You do your thing. I'm saying yay, but I'm not involved, please.
Yes.
You know, so that I think that was, and that was really my philosophy through most of it, was that I was very proud of my parents, and I was very proud of what they'd done, but I didn't necessarily want to be a part of it. I didn't necessarily want to see my face on the front page of newspapers. I didn't want to see my business, the breakdown of my marriage, whatever it was. I didn't necessarily, you know, and that was a hard thing to swallow, is that it came with the territory. And that was a lot of people's philosophy, was like, well, you're getting all these perks. There's got to be a downside somewhere. Take your lumps and go. And so sometimes that was the hard part, where you're seen as part of a system and not really as an individual. But then that's also for your safety and for the safety of, you know, the principal. So there's some of these amazing moments that I will never forget of the rest of my life. And then there were moments where it's like, is this all worth it? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing in this position? Is this all worth it? I think I can look back 10 years now from my father passing away, and it was worth it. I can look and I can see the good, and I can see us as a family. And the I look back at the times we laughed, the times my parents were very normal. My mom and my dad were just a mom and a dad that loved each other, and they were just just as goofy as anybody's old parents that you think of. They'll fuss at each other. I remember a friend who was a doctor was terrified because he went up to see my parents at one point, and he was so terrified. He was like, "What do I do? But I was like, just go. What do you do with your parents? Do the same thing." And he came back and he goes, "I was really disappointed." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "I don't know. I guess I thought I'd go to like Coming to America. And instead I went and I saw this old man and this old woman, and she was fussing at him and saying, well, you didn't take your vitamins when you were supposed to." He said, "They're so normal." And I was like, "Well, I'm normal. Why wouldn't you think they would be normal?" He's like, "I don't know. I expected an elephant to carry me up or something. He wanted this whole Coming to America thing." And I was like, "Sorry for you. It's just
Absolutely.
Gogo." Yeah, it's just Gogo and Grandpa.
So Mr. President gets called out by the wife as well.
Gets called out by the wife as well. I think it's the only person who can call out Mr. President.
Probably, yes.
I think if you go to any president ever in the history, it's his wife who's usually going to be telling him now when we got married, and she'll be the only person who will be able to say that, because he's the commander-in-chief. So who else is going to call him on his stuff but his wife? So that was my parents. They fussed at each other and and loved each other, and that was them. And it was, I look back now and I have really fond memories of seeing them later on in life, having found such a nice balance for each other, yin and yang.
Beautiful. So your dad was in office for what, 7 years?
Yes, for about 7 years. I think it was almost 7 years. Yes. Yeah. Because he did his first term and then 2 years of his second term, I believe. Yeah. Almost 2 years of his second term. Yeah. Just shy. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now let's talk about your work life. I know that you are a coach, and this is something that you're very, very passionate about. And you also mentor young girls. Tell us about all that.
Well, it's been a very interesting journey to get to where I am, especially coming from the family that I came from. There was a lot of expectation, like, are you going to follow in your father's footsteps? Are you going to go into politics? Are you going to go into trade? Are you going to go work with the UN? And there was all those things. And I was blessed enough to be able to serve my country twice. Once when I was his, I helped out my father in the beginning of about the first year of his administration. I was his personal assistant for about a year until somebody else came in just during the transition time when we were transitioning them from regular folk into being in the State House. So my work was really just dealing with all of their personal things that, didn't have to do with government. And then the second time, up until about last year, I was able to be a diplomat, and I was the tourism attaché. But when I reached the consulate, there was no trade attaché, so I also took that as part of my portfolio. So coaching obviously came into this a lot because I did my coaching training in 2015. And it seems so completely different from what I've done and etc. But it actually isn't. I think somebody like my mother probably influenced me a lot into going into helping women. And I had to figure out, okay, I want to help women like my mother did, but how do I do that? And coaching ended up being the vehicle. My daughter, as they say, out of the mouth of babes, my daughter at one point said, "Mom, you should be a teacher." Now, when she said teacher, I thought little kids in his classroom. And I was like, oh no, baby. I mean, I've been a Sunday school teacher, and I love that. Once a week for a couple of hours, I've got your crazy kids. I hug them, kiss them, and send them right back to you. But I didn't think that, when you were saying teaching and stuff, I didn't understand the coaching side of it and leading people to their best selves. So when I remembered that I wanted to do coaching many years ago in the US, and when I arrived here in SA, there was a lady, and at that time she was considered Oprah's coach. She was an American lady, and she used to, I've forgotten her name, but she used to do trainings, and she stopped doing them by the time I arrived in SA. And I was like, so what am I going to do? And I found this school, the South African College of Applied Psychology. And I took coaching, and it completely and utterly changed my life. I had thought of coaching, what you see in the movies, where this person sits with you and says, yes, you can, and they say all these really cliched things. So I thought that was what coaching was. And I didn't really realize until I started studying it, how it helps with personal development, how it helps with career progression, how it helps with succession, how it helps leaders in terms of leaders are in a lonely place. They don't have a lot of people they can bounce back information and thought processes and etc. They don't have safe spaces because you're at the top. You're supposed to have it all. So that's where somebody like a coach comes in. And with the mentoring, I think it was another homage to my mother. My mother trained a lot of women in tailoring. She did a lot of hands-on things with the women of Malawi. And I knew I wanted to get back. And once I started mentoring, it just made sense. And then about 4 years ago, I really heard God speaking to me. And he said, your purpose, very clearly, your purpose is to coach, to mentor, and teach. And I've been doing that ever since. And it's just what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate. I think the thing that I love the most is when I'm working with somebody and you can physically see that, how in the cartoons they have that little bulb that goes off bing in somebody's head, when somebody's thinking and then they've got the thought. As a coach, you can almost see somebody do that. And you almost see the metaphorical bulb that goes bing when a person gets it. And that's and they start to come into the authentic self, whether it's an executive, whether it's an individual, whether it's a business person, it doesn't matter. A lot of times people, especially as business coaches, we don't like to be called life coaches, because it seems the life coach part is the kind of what we think is the airy fairy part of coaching. And, a lot of business coaches will look down on life coaches. But I also do believe that all coaching is life coaching, because that person, that executive sitting in your chair has a life. And that life, whether they want to or not, is affecting how they show up as a leader. So if they're not getting sleep because they have a 3-month-old, if they're going through a divorce, if their mother is ill and living with them, that shows up some way in their leadership. So it's important to look at a person. They have a thing called the wheel of life. And the wheel of life is about 12 different areas of your life. And you can look at it and say, where am I? You can kind of grade yourself and say, where am I? Where am I in career? Where am I in spirituality? Where am I in my health goals? Where am I in my relationship goals? And you can look at yourself as a holistic human being and kind of see, where am I? Where do I want to be? And then that's what we work on in coaching, is getting you to where you want to be. In addition, I'm a soft skills coach. So I work a lot in soft skills. And soft skills, I think, are so underrated, but oh my goodness, I know if you've ever met somebody with low social intelligence, it hurts. Like, immediately, like, whoa, does this person not see how they are showing up? And the things they're saying and the ways they're saying it, are they not seeing how it's abrasive to people, especially in the business world, And so more and more, there've been articles and things where people are saying, especially executives, when they're hiring, they're looking for people with good soft skills. But not a lot of people concentrate on teaching people those soft skills. So negotiation, communication, assertiveness. What's the difference between being assertive and being abrasive? Two huge different things, how to handle crucial conversations, how to say the things. How do you respect? Okay, here's one. How do you respect somebody you don't respect? You don't really like this person, but you're in a workplace with them and you've got to be able to respect them. So how do you do those things? Because that's what makes you an exceptional leader. And that's what takes you to the next level. That's the difference between managers and leaders. So that's another place that I like to say I play in. That's another area I play in.
Beautiful. I love the concept of soft skills because even going forward, soft skills are going to be a bigger part of the leadership journey. Because, as you know, being human is going to be the big concept going forward as we work alongside the machines. in our workplace, because right now, when you think of the digital workers who are the software robots that are working with people, they're all part of the workforce. And how do we differentiate ourselves from the digital workers? It's by being human, right? And therefore, all these concepts that you're talking about of soft skills become very, very crucial. So just let's dive into that and just let's look at the role that coaching plays in one's leadership journey. Why is coaching is important? Why should I have a coach as a leader?
I think I would tell you, if you're going to be a leader, every leader needs a coach. They need a spiritual advisor. They need a mentor, because you need your sounding board. You need your team. You need your village of your people who you can come to. A coach is really important, because what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to work on you coming to the realization of who you are and how you can be. So we'll work through certain issues. And what is so nice about coaching is it's a safe space. If you want to come there and you want to sit for a while, it's fine. I'll ask you why, but we'll have a conversation about it. It's a safe place. And even by the nature of my coaching certification, everything we say is required to be confidential. I can lose my ICF accreditation if I divulge things. So we have rules that we're under. But the beauty about coaching is meeting the person where they are and walking beside them on this journey. If you sit and think of any coach, even if you think of a coach for athletes, you think of a coach for somebody like Serena Williams. Getting a good coach makes the difference between you being Serena Williams and you giving up tennis in university. Who is that person who's going to be your champion, but who's going to iron sharpens iron? So who's the person who's going to push you? Because my job as a coach is also to hold up a mirror to you. And when you say something or you're doing things that don't hold up to your values or don't hold up to the goals that we're going through, I'm the one who will look at you and say, this doesn't add up. What I'm seeing and what you say, this doesn't add up. So what can we do to bridge the gap to get you there? So my job is to always be questioning, to be curious, to be non-judgmental, and sit and think about it in this world. How many people do you talk to who are non-judgmental? Just by nature, we're going to be judging. It's what we do. So to have a space where this person is, they're going to call me on my stuff, but they're not going to judge me for my stuff. This calling somebody out and judging them is two completely different things. And even as a coach, there's a professional way we call you out. Like I said, I'll take it back to your values, and I'll say, you say you value XYZ, but your actions are not adding up with that. So how can we make that, how can we make bridge the gap between what you say you value and how you live those values? And then I think another thing that's important for people is to see the things you can't see about yourself. My coaching is based on is strength-based coaching, and from positive psychology. And what I love about strength-based, whether you're using the Clifton strengths or whatever method you are to assess a client's strengths, you're looking at them and you're saying, what do you do well? We're not going to ignore what you don't do well, but we're going to leverage what you do well to deal with some of the things that are your quote unquote weaknesses. I don't love that term weaknesses, but it's be what you're not strong in. And what's amazing about working with somebody's strengths is sometimes people don't even see that side of themselves. To have somebody come to you and say, I'm noticing resilience, and somebody says, oh yeah, I really am resilient. My whole life I've gotten back up, again, or I'm seeing that you're really courageous, and so the other part is the affirmation. We're not just here to give good news. We're two sides of the mirror. But the thing that it creates working with a coach is balance. And it's also important in terms of work-life balance. And like I was saying, when you look at the total human being and you look at the wheel of life and you look at the whole body health, it's important for me as a coach to be able to say to you, okay, that's great. You are killing it in the workplace. Wow, well done. Very proud of you. I am concerned that you did say your doctor said your cholesterol was high. So what do you think is contributing to that? because it's not enough just to be happy for their business accolades. They have to be able to have the
Mm,
body and the stamina and the mindset to continue in that way, or they burn out quite quickly.
mm,
So those are some of the things that I like to look at, and look at a human being in their totality, and to understand, how are you sleeping, how are you eating, how, because all of that affects how you're showing up. Let me tell you, the worst thing you want is a leader who is grumpy because they're on 2 hours of sleep and haven't eaten, and their hormones are going all over the place because
mm,
your body is gone into shock because you've been working flat out for 6 weeks, and now you have to go and rally the troops. You're not going to do that very well. That's
mm.
just a fact. The human body can only take so much abuse. At some point, it's going to shut down. So it's important. I think the important of a coach is to remind you of those other parts of your life, that those parts of your life are just as important in how you're, making it to the top of the, Johannesburg Stock Exchange or whatever. Those are all important things that you need to look at. And that's where the kind of the whole life balance, the work-life balance comes into play.
Beautiful, beautiful, and well explained. I love that holistic view. Coaching and mentorship usually go hand in hand, and the people confuse the two terms.
Hmm.
Do you just want to speak to, what mentorship is and what the difference is between the two?
I think with coaching, a lot of the time we don't give advice. So I'm meeting you where you are as Sarah, and we're working on your common goals and dreams, and etc. The things that you want to accomplish. We do that in mentoring too, but there is a given expectation that if I'm mentoring somebody, I'm doing so because I have a certain level of expertise or life experience that I will impart on that person. Whereas as a coach, it's more the professional experience. I have the tools to know how to deal with certain situations. But mentoring, if I'm mentoring a 25-year-old, I'm mentoring according to me being a almost 49-year-old woman and business person. And I'm going to bring my experience into mentoring, Whereas with coaching, it's about more bringing my expertise, but it's more concentrating on you. So I have had a coach and a mentor at different points in my life, and they've done different things for me. My mentor is the person I go to where I'm like, I have hit a wall professionally. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm struggling here, or I'm struggling with a person, and we're gonna sit there and we're gonna talk it out in a way, and she's gonna bring her life experience. When I go to my coach tends to be, yes, as a coach and a mentor, I have coaches and mentors. My coach tends to be like, all right, so what is it you're trying to accomplish? Okay, what's keeping you from accomplishing that? Now, as a coach, my coaching will always go into my mentoring. It just is the way it is. But it's a different thing. Anybody can be a mentor. Anybody can be a mentor. If you're older, you can turn back and you can mentor someone. Not everybody has the aptitude or the training to be a coach. And yes, they are professional mentors, but the type of mentorship that I tend to do usually is somebody who's not younger than me or less experienced than me, and they're looking for my expertise and my guidance, less than looking for a sounding board and somebody to help me work through my goals and development. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I would then want us to dive into strength-based leadership. I know we've touched on it a little bit as we've been, conversing. Let's just define, when we talk about strength-based leadership, what is it that we're talking about?
So strength-based leadership is, which I would encourage people for in strength-based coaching, is about understanding your strengths. So one of the things we'd first start with is we would evaluate what are your strengths. There's a different way to do that. There's the VIA Strengths Survey. There's also Clifton Strengths from the Clifton Strengths comes from, I believe it's just called the, which organization is it? I'm sorry, I've forgotten. But they
I
do
know
the
it's
assessing.
Gallup. It's Gallup.
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 That's
Yes.
it. I almost said Gallo. My brain was not,
Yeah.
but it Gallup. Yeah. So
Yeah.
from Gallup. So once you do your assessment, obviously it gives you, like if you were going to Gallup, It gives you
Mm,
34 strengths. Of those 34 strengths, it tells you the 10 strongest ones. Of those 10, it tells you the 5 that you really, really use. And from there, you start to see you pretty much start to see this is who I am. I'm an achiever. I'm a learner. Whatever I believe there's 5 major sections. And you're under each one of those, you'll have, one of your top strengths will be under one of those. So what this helps you do now is, and especially if you really start doing a deep dive into strengths, you know
mm,
what your strengths are. Then you start to know what your team's strengths are. And then you start to see where the gaps are. Okay. You may all be achievers, and there may not be a finisher. And that may be the
mm,
problem, because you have all these lofty, amazing goals, but nobody to carry them to the finish line, you know?
mm,
And so this also helps you leverage when you're partnering with people, when you're working with people, it helps you leverage. And I think somebody who's done this in a very clever way is Richard Branson. He's like, I'm not the smartest person on the earth. I surround myself with these smart people. And I
mm,
think that's something that comes in leadership, where you start to realize she's the researcher, she's the learner. We need facts, we need information in 30 seconds. That's the person to go to. I need her on my team. This one is going to make sure we cross the finish line. This one is going to have these big, lofty ideas, and they're going to get us through. This is the analytical one, who's going to look at every single line of this and make sure we are on point. And when you understand strengths, especially in teams and in organizations, it helps you to leverage them well. Even amongst yourself, it helps you to know, this is not my forte. This is not my cup of tea.
mm,
Or as we say, this is not my portion.
mhm,
Accounting is not my portion. So I know I'm not even going to try to do the books. I'm going to look for the best person to do
mm,
the books. So it's
mm,
about an understanding of yourself as a leader, and knowing really and truly what your competitive advantage is and what you are good at, and doing that and doing it well. Now, this doesn't mean you give up your power to somebody else, because this is a weakness of mine, so you just do it, whatever you do is fine. No, you're still a leader, you need to lead. But the point, and they're going to need your guidance, and they're going to need your buy-in, and etc. But it is about knowing, okay, where do I put the majority of my time and effort in doing what as a leader?
mm,
And then what things do I outsource? Do I delegate? Do and what things, and then it also helps you understand what things are urgent, what things are important, what things are necessary for me to be doing, because we can do a lot of busy work just because we get caught up in things that look good, but there's a difference between good and good for you. So that's
mm,
the thing, is getting to what is good for you, what is right for you,
mm,
and I think that's an important part of self-awareness as a leader. Leaders go wrong when they are not aware of self, and they're not aware of their limitations, and the things that they're amazing at. And it is a double-sided sword, and you do have to be balanced, because you don't want to go into the realm where then now all you live in is what you're great at, and you never try anything. Yeah, you still need to try, you still need to put yourself out of your comfort zone, but it's important to have that self-awareness.
mm. Beautiful, beautiful. So, what trends are you seeing in big corporate organizations when it comes to strength-based leadership? Is there a lot of uptake in big organizations?
I think so. They'll all call it different names. I know one of the names that's been thrown around quite a bit is servant leadership. So
Ah,
that's a phrase that goes along around. What I tend to see is in corporate is their waves of things. So it's things like
mm,
agile, it's things like servant
mm,
leadership. These are the big things that are the
mm,
drives right now. And I think for
mm.
me, what my prediction is a lot of that is trying to get to the soft skills and intuitive ways of doing things, rather
Yeah.
than just saying we have, this is the way things are done. This is the way things have always been
Mm,
done, and that's it. Some of these systems are coming into play because they're trying to figure out, how do we make people work better? How do we utilize what we're good at? How do we, take our competitive advantage and leverage that? So,
mm,
so that's what it really comes down to. And again, it comes down to all of the soft skills again, is understanding, what are we good at? What are we trying to say? Who are we communicating that to? All of these things that marketing departments spend hours and hours telling executives
mm,
about, whether they heed them or not. So yeah, that's probably, I would say those are some of the big things. It's going back to especially after the pandemic.
Mm,
I'm seeing that a lot of people are looking at leadership styles that are adaptive. So I'd almost say adaptive leadership. And what you
mm,
said earlier about humanity, working on the human, on the person first, like,
mm,
people based type of leadership. Those are in the servant leadership. Those are some of the things and the themes that I'm seeing more and more of what people want. Whereas there was a time where we wanted that strong leader who just would lead from the
mm,
front, and they'd rally cry and we'd all follow them. People are like, no, to get people's buy-in, they want to see you as a human, number one.
mm,
They want to see you as somebody who's approachable. They want to see that you bleed. Do I cut you? Do you bleed?
mm,
You know what I mean? Like, are you available? Are you
mm,
authentic? And
mm,
that's another big one, is authenticity. If you're not authentic, you're dead in the water. People will catch you quick. They will.
mm,
If you're not living your values, if you're not living the way you want other people to, you will be caught out on it. So people are
mm,
a lot, in this social media age of us, and even in the Google age, where you can look up things, where you can learn things. There's books available, there's Amazon,
mm,
there's Audible, there's whatever. People are a lot more aware of things than they were before. And the environment has changed. You used to have a job and be there minimum 10 years, probably 30. People job hop every 2 3 years because you can double and triple your salary. And now the
mm,
newest trend is people working from home. So if you're dealing with somebody who's working from home, you are going to have to be a patient boss, because you're going to have to understand life happens.
mm,
And that used to be a thing before. It was like, I don't care what's happening outside these doors, get the work done. Now you can't do that. We had a pandemic, the world literally shut down. So you can't have that attitude of whatever happens outside work is none of my business, as a corporation. Some corporations are doing it well. They're making sure there's wellness days for their people. They're making sure they have access to funding for education. Some are doing it well. They're adapting, and they're seeing, if we don't take care of these people, our best and our brightest, we will lose them.
mm, mm.
So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I also find that with the pandemic, people have actually looked into their lives and reassessed what is important to them, what their
Mhm.
values are. Let's just dive into values, because values are a very important aspect of your
Mhm.
soft skills when it comes
Mhm.
to leadership. What are values,
Definitely.
and what place do they hold in one's
Mhm.
leadership role?
Definitely. I would say values are your North Star. So
Mm,
everything that you do, whatever direction you're going in, they always say to travelers, look for the North Star, and then you're going in the right direction. That is
mm,
basically it with leadership, and that's about your values. A lot of times as leaders, we do not sit down before we even start our leadership journey to describe and decipher and define our values, which can be done many different ways. Sometimes it's just sitting there and being like, what's important to me? Because that's what values basically are. What is important to me? What's the most important things that they are to me? If it's family, if it's success, if it's whatever, then once you know that, starting, okay, family, what do you mean by family? Do you
mm,
mean all of your family? Do you mean your nuclear family? If it's success, okay, well, what does that success look like? What does success look like to you? Because what success looks like to me and what success looks like to you, Sarah, could be two completely different things. Mine could be a monetary value, where yours could be success means that I'm able to retire at 65 and go to live in my farm, that's beside my village, and I'm taking care of the old one. It could be a completely different
mm,
thing. So there's not one definition of success. So with values, that's the thing. It's about doing that deep dive and understanding what is the most important thing to me. Now, why is this important for leaders? Because, well, the one most obvious way why it's important to leaders is because you're going to get tempted. And when you
mm,
get tempted by anything, good or bad, because sometimes temptation, it's a good thing. Somebody's tempting you with a better offer. Like, come work for us. We'll up your salary $50,000, or sometimes it's a bad temptation. Give us that contract, we'll give you 50,000. Whatever it is, you've got to be able to have that North Star of your values. You have that litmus test. As we remember, we did litmus tests in science. That thing where you test it and you say, what's the pH? Is it alkaline? Is it acid? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? That's basically what you're doing. Values help you understand your personal bottom line. And when you understand that personal bottom line, here, I go no further. So when you're in a negotiation, when you're advocating for yourself or somebody else, this is as low as I go, because if I go lower than this contravenes my value of me always knowing my worth, or that type of thing, like, because I'm taking less than I'm supposed to get, yet I know I've studied this hard, I've done all of this work. Why am I doing that? Now, there may be times where you may look and say, okay, I'm going to compromise this value for the greater good or whatever. But the point is, you're having that awareness and that understanding that this is my value and I hold it up and I live it this way. It's also important for leaders to live in integrity and honesty, and that's where the values come in, because that's how you live out your values. You can't say you value integrity and you end up in a tender scandal where you're stealing money from somebody, or where you've embezzled. You weren't living that value. And that's what happens a lot of times. And I think people get so hurt by their leaders, especially in the political realm, when it's like, I believed in you and I trusted in you, and all this time you were doing this, and what is that? And that's somebody, literally, that comes down to somebody not living their values. And it may be a case of they didn't even really sit and define their values. Let's be honest. They may not have had, because once you have that, you sit there and for me, if I take it to me personally as a leader, once I understand my values, it's very easy when an offer, when an opportunity, when a person comes up to me with something, I can look at it and say, oh, that sounds really good, but that's not for me. I'm going to pass it on to Sarah because Sarah said she wanted to do X, Y, Z. Or I can say, that is amazing. That's going to work for me. And that will even let me say, look, I started on this project and it was amazing and it was working for me. I'm now overworked and etc. and, and underpaid and whatever. This doesn't add up with my value, what I came in for, what my objective of doing this thing was for. This doesn't add up anymore. Therefore, I am going lower than my personal bottom line. If you look at accounting, you have you're in the red or the black. You do that in your personal life, in your professional life as well. Is this adding to my life, or is this subtract? Is it an asset or a liability? And that all comes down to understanding your values and understanding what is so important to you that it could be part of your definition. And I think at the end of the day, when the thing that's important about values is we want people to say we lived out our values. And we want, when that day comes, when we have our obituary and somebody's reading about us, we want our values to be in there without us even saying it. We want people to say, she was somebody, I know if I look at myself, I'd be like, she was somebody who was so passionate about the women on the African continent. Even if they don't say those specific words, it will be like, she was always fighting for people. That's my value. You know what I mean? So it has to show up in everything that you do. And it's so important, but it's so overlooked. And then, like I said, we get so frustrated when people let us down and we don't understand. And we sit there and we say, why did they do this? They did it because they were not living their values, plain and simple. What they believed and how they acted they're not married. They had a very unhappy divorce,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well explained. So then the next question would be, how do I then develop my values? How do I learn these values? How do I develop my values? How do I know, what my values are?
There are 1,000,001 assessments online that I've seen, in my work talking about understanding your values. It's basically self-awareness and sitting with yourself and working through it. There's no other way to know it but sitting with yourself. And not all of us for some of us, that's uncomfortable, but you've got to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and sit with yourself and kind of work through, you can find one of the things online and that talks about values. I've given out, and I've even seen different things that help you cross out what is it I value, and then they put them in different categories. In positive psychology, we have a lot of tools, so there's tons of tools. But at the end of the day, it's about sitting with yourself and being like, you can, whichever tool that you use is understanding and the awareness and being like, what is important to me? And because this thing is important, it's the asking yourself, so how am I then going to live this out? If I'm not already living this out, how am I going to realign my life so that I can live this out? And sometimes the answer is painful. I've had answers back that really hurt, where I said, I value being in a situation where I'm trusted. I value being in a situation where I am, where it's a good work environment. And the answer back was like, well, what does that say about where you are now? And I realized it's in a very toxic place where I was in the middle of a lot of drama and it was stressing me out. And I look back now, a year or so away from it, and I'm glad to be away from it. But when I realized that this is not aligning with my life and the doors started shutting, there was a panic, but that's that hard and deep look you've got to do, because it's very easy to put the blinders on and be like, take the paycheck and run. Don't ask questions, just take the paycheck and run. But that's where that then affects your authenticity, that then affects your integrity. So if you want to live out loud and you want to live an authentic life, then it's about getting to the bottom of who you are and what's important to you. And that's going to be different to it. We may have overlaps, but it's going to be different to each person, so it's doing that hard work. It's not easy work. And if it was easy work, then everybody would be able to rattle off their values left, right, and center. They would make the right choices because they would hold it up to their values and the litmus test to say, this is acidic, acid's bad for us to, chuck it out. But we don't do that, because it's hard work. And I say that with complete and utter compassion, because I have been there, in the point where something doesn't feel good, but you don't know why it doesn't feel good. So that's what the value is about, is getting to the point, like, I know this isn't for me and it doesn't feel good. Where values comes in is, and this is the reason why. That's the values part. Because it doesn't gel with my religion, it doesn't gel with my personal beliefs, etc., etc. Yeah.
I love the fact that you're bringing in the feeling side. And I think for me, that's the simplicity of the whole conversation when it comes to values. What role does the feelings play into this whole concept of knowing what you value as a person, or what is important to you?
Feelings are a tricky one, hey? I'll say feelings are a tricky one in terms of psychology and even in terms of coaching and that type of things, because feelings are not always necessarily fact. What we feel doesn't mean that's exactly what is happening. I may feel you snubbed me and you did not snub me. You just were busy, or, something happened that was extenuating circumstances. So feelings are tricky in that sense of feelings. But feelings in terms of that, where your intuition, where your North Star kicks in, and this is not for you, girlfriend. Run screaming from the building right now, but you stay. That's where the feelings come in. There was a book I read many years ago. I think his name was Gavin Becker. And the book was called, I've been looking for another copy. I think it may be out of print, but it was called The Gift of Fear. And he was talking essentially about, and people in general, but he did zone in on women, that sometimes you get that feeling and you're like, this person is sketchy, but you feel, no, that's not a nice thing to say. So I'm not going to, walk across the street and offend them and whatever. And he's like, better offend them and stay alive. That's your warning voice. There's always that thing that goes, and the beauty of the warning voice, with the values and with everything, is it starts off very quietly. And it just gently says to you, excuse me, how do we feel about this? And you'll be like, what? No, it's fine. It's completely fine. It's cool. Okay. Are you sure? Like, yeah. And it gets louder. you know. And then by the time the bells and the whistles are ringing and the firemen have come and they're trying to put out the fire, you have irreparable damage. But really and truly, you smelt that smoke long ago. You just chose not to heed the warning, you know. So that's that part of the feelings that I would say is important. Is it's less than the perception, but more that your body, your intuition, Holy Spirit will tell you, nuh. And that's the values, you know, because it's like, this isn't you. You hear that voice loud and clear. This is not you, baby girl. What are you doing? You know, and then it's like, but I want that money or I want whatever. So I think this is where we get ourselves in trouble. Another way we get ourselves in trouble over and over again. One is not knowing our values, and two is ignoring them when they're being broken. It's just flat out ignoring them, you know, and ignoring the warning signs that come. Yeah.
So I love what you're saying about self-awareness, and there's what I call a knowing. You have a knowing as a person. Like you said, you know what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and some of the things, especially things that are not necessarily evil or bad. It's just that we've got different preferences as people. I think there's a place to actually embrace that knowingness. So, for example, I'll give you an example about myself. One of the reasons why I started an IT company, a business, is that I valued flexibility so that I could be there for my children. But because I didn't understand that we all value things differently, I thought, heaven, everybody should get onto an entrepreneurship journey. So whenever I was around my friends, I was like, hey, why don't you start your own company? But over the years, I've actually realized that, look, running your own business is not for everybody. Some people are cut out for the corporate world, and that's perfectly fine. And we celebrate that. And some people are cut out for, the entrepreneurship journey that is usually not an easy journey, and that's fine. It's about what is it that you feel comfortable, and you remain true to that, right?
100%. You have to remain true to that. It's also the thing, look, in the coaching world, in the self-development world, there's a million and one methodologies, okay? So there's the 5 a.m. Millionaires Club. There's the 7 Habits to Effective People. There's the, if you want to get esoteric, there's the, is it called The Gift? No, it's not called The Gift. There's another one. Look, there's the 4 agreements. There's a million things that come out and a million more that will come out that tell you this is the way to live. That's great. It's not for everybody. The 5 a.m. club is not going to work for me. I'll tell you why. I can be up at 5 a.m. and I am up at 5 a.m. every day. I am not functioning till a good 8. And it doesn't even have to do with coffee. I don't have to have coffee. It's just my brain is not working that way. From 5 to 8, I am a robot. I'm doing everything by rote. I have set it up the night before. I'm packing lunches or driving, doing school drops, or, sending back emails. Forgive me, people who get emails at 5 a.m. at 6:30 in the morning, whatever. That's the time where I can do admin. I'm paying bills. That is the time. Oh, my best bill paying hours are from about 6 to about 7:30. I will get all the bills done. Things that do not take creativity. Then about, and I can be that way till about mid-afternoon. Then around mid-afternoon is when the creativity starts to kick in, especially when I'm writing courses, I'm writing webinars. That is the time I'm sitting there on my computer till about 10 p.m. and I'm go, 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 go. From about 4 to 10, best hours. The stuff I put out the next morning, I'm like, this was you? Well done. But when I'm trying to do it during the day, I'm forgetting the word towel. I'm like, bread, how do you spell bread? And I'm like, B-R-A-D-E. And I'm like, what is going on with my brain? Because my brain is just not kicking in. About 10, I hit a wall. 10 p.m., I hit a wall. I can force myself to stay up later, but that's the time where my body's like, hey, friend, now we want to calm down. We want to go on social media, look at some things. Then we want to read the Bible. Then we want to take our hot shower. We want to crawl in the covers up till here. I have a weighted blanket. So it's like, I want to, crawl in like this and drift off to sleep. That's my time. around then, if you come to my bedroom, my daughter will always be like, why does it look like a bat cave? Because I switched down the lights. That's where I'm at. And I had to realize that. So when I looked at books like the 5 a.m. Club, I was like, I'm doing something wrong. Because he says to wake up and jump up and exercise. And I was like, I'm going to try exercising in the morning at 5 a.m. I go to the gym at 8 a.m. because if I exercise at 5 a.m., I am going to hurt myself. I am clumsy. I walk into walls. I trip over things. I look at myself and I'm like, who are you? What is wrong with you? So I kept saying to myself, no, keep trying. It's going to kick in. At some point, it's not kicking in. It's not me. And once I realized this is not me, it was okay to let go of it and say, this is brilliant work. I took what I could from what he said and I let go of what wouldn't work for me. And I think that's the important thing, is also understanding some things are for you. Like you're saying, some things are for you, some things are not for you. And that's actually okay. And that's the beauty of being so diverse in this world, is we all have different ways. I have some people I know from 4 a.m. They're like, cheer, to like 9 p.m. They're like, go, go, go. They like intense and brilliant. But 9 p.m. hits, lights out. Wherever they are right there, you just know they're frozen and that's it. So, all of it, and in a way, I look at it kind of like some of these self-development things, it's kind of like diets. And what I believe is all diets work and no diets work. And all diets work because somebody will tell you keto worked for them, this worked for them, that worked for them. And then the next person will be like, that was the worst thing I ever tried. So all of them work and none of them work. It's a possibility. You've got to find you. It's like, it goes back to that self-awareness. You've got to find the thing that does work for you. And it may not always be what you expect. Because like I said, I really thought I was going to be amazing at 5 a.m. Nope.
Very, very interesting conversation, and I love that concept of you've got to find you, and there's an aspect of it being a journey, right? For you to actually discover your values as you go along in life. You discover what you value, and can we also say that values can also change along the course of
100%.
your life journey?
Yeah, they can change. They can change according to where you are in life, according to what has happened to you. 100% they change. I think there'll always be that golden thread, that thread that lies between, from your whole life of who you are. But remembering, we focus on different things. In our 20s, we're trying to, just adult. Okay, we're learning this adulting things. You mean I have to show up for work every day? Yes, you do, sweetheart. 30s is when you're finally, you're an adult now. You're getting into it. You're understanding that these are the things that I do as an adult. You're probably married by then. You may have kids if you're not, or have a partner, a long-term partner, whatever. You're starting to make commitments to things in your 30s. 40s is usually when the accolades are coming in. You're a rising star. You're getting the promotions. You're doing the whatever. You're going to a different level. And then by the time we're in our 50s and stuff, we're looking at legacies. 60s, they're the elders. They're like, we've done this all. We can sit back and tell you how this goes down. You know what I mean? And above. So in all of those places, obviously, you're going to have different things that are so important to you. In your 20s, it may be fitting in. Whereas in your 70s, you really don't care about fitting in. You have lived a whole big life. You are 100% of who you are. Now it's about, what am I leaving behind? What am I imparting to you as I go to my next plane of existence? Completely different night and days in what you're going to concentrate on. But that doesn't mean you're not the same human being all along. So there'll be some things that are still there, that the core one or two values will be the thread, but the things around it, like in your 70s, it may not be raising happy kids because your kids are raised. Now it may be being the best grandparent ever. And an interesting thing that I've seen when you talk about values changing, there was a star, I think she used to be in Destiny's Child, and she was talking about her relationship with her father. And her relationship with her father was very contentious for most of her life. He was not there for her. He did not value being a father then. He wanted to be out and be in the streets. He wanted to be independent. He didn't want to be tied down. However, where they found each other was when she had children, because he started to show up as a completely different human being as a grandfather. That became his value, was to give all that love and stuff. And that's how she was saying that's how she was able to forgive him and let him in her life, because he is an amazing grandparent. He shows up all the time, which he couldn't do for her because that wasn't his value then. But now he shows up, and that's what brought together, that's what brought about her forgiveness. So even looking at something like that, he's the same human being, but what's important to him now versus what was important to him 35 years ago, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. What a great conversation this has been. I have definitely learned a lot. The soft skills are, skills that everybody needs in life, and we all need to be working on that, because it's one of those areas that we're continuously growing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we come to the end of the conversation, Duwa, what do you want us to remember you for?
Okay. I think what I'd like you to remember me for is the journey that I'm on, the journey that I'm on as a woman. And I hope it's an inspiring journey. And, and there's so much more of the story to come. Hopefully soon, one day I will write that book and it will be out. But it's basically, if you can look at the trajectory of my life and see that it's a journey, and that you can understand that we all will have different ways of getting to the point of self and getting to authenticity, but it's important to keep searching for that. There was a long period of time, I would say I felt lost. I felt lost under the shadow of my parents, especially under the shadow of my father. And I wondered, who would I be and what would I contribute to the world? And because of not knowing that, I felt untethered for a very long time, and I was just floating in the wind. So this thing of me saying know yourself and self-awareness, it's something I had to come to myself, and had to understand that you can have a definition the world gives you, can have definition yourself gives you. They all may be what make you. But it's very important to know yourself and know what you bring to the table, and know your strengths and know your values, because that's what you're going to stand on. If I hadn't started knowing and understanding that, I think I still would be pursuing ways to quote unquote follow in my parents' footsteps. But when I look at myself now, I have followed in their footsteps, because if I look at my mother and I think of how passionate she was about female empowerment, and that's where I am right now. If I look at my father in leadership, that's the space that I am right now. So I smile and I think, okay, I did it. But like that old singer says, it was Frank Sinatra says, but I did it my way.
Yeah.
So it may not be the way that people would have expected me to show up, but this is authentically me, and it's something that I really enjoy. And I like myself, and I like who I am and who I've become. And that's an amazing place to be, to just, and it's not out of hubris, it's not out of arrogance. It's just of knowing that this is me. This is what I bring to the table. I'm very confident with that, where I wasn't before. So the thing I would think is, if I just get another training, if I do another training, if I get another certificate, if I do another whatever, it will finally make me worthy of this title, or this belief that people think, you are so and so, so you have to be amazing. And I think a lot of people, if you have parents who have been quote unquote famous, you go through that and you're like, how do I follow that up? I mean, like for me, like literally, how do I follow it up? It's like you've done more. I'd have to become the queen, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's showing up as you. And that's the lesson I'll say for everybody, regardless of who your parent was, your brother, your cousin, your uncle, your whatever. It's learn to show up as you, learn to show up authentically as you, and then be the best at that, because that's really all you can do.
Love, love that. Show up as yourself and be the best at that because no one
Yeah.
can beat you at that, right?
Nobody.
Yes.
I'm right now. I'm winning. I'm batting 1,000
Mm, mm.
at being
Love it.
myself.
Love
Somebody
it.
can overtake me, but they're not going to overtake me. That's
Love
100% because
it.
I'm being me. You know.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Dua, thank you so much for your time. Conversing with you has been very, very insightful. And like I've said, I've learned a lot. And I hope to have more of you on this podcast just so that you can bring more of your insights.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed our time today. It's been an important conversation. It's one of the first ones where I've had um, where I get to say all parts of me. So that was really nice to give you all the different things that have made Dua Dua. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Cheers, cheers.
All right. Thank
Till we
you.
see each other soon.
Soon, definitely. Bye bye.